What are the world's richest people? Indian billionaire.
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 A name that echoes in boardrooms and political corridors alike.
Adani, 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 Adani.
A man whose ascent from modest beginnings to unbelievable power is shrouded in both ambition and controversy.
There is a playbook, and the playbook is already at play in India. The playbook is for them to become an infrastructure arm of the government.
The US government has taken the Adani Group to court
On multiple counts of fraud.
To get solar energy contracts which were worth $2 billion over a period of 20 years.
The Adani Group has opted out of US funding for its port project in Colombo and will instead use its own resources to finance its Sri Lanka port capacity expansion plans.
A man whose name is synonymous with a conglomerate whose reach knows no borders.
The Adani Group chairperson, Mr. Gautam Adani, today said that the group will invest $10 billion in US energy security and infrastructure.
Bangladesh imports nearly 10% of its electricity from India. Most of it is supplied by the multinational Adani Group.
Adani Group is planning to invest over $1 billion in setting up projects in Sri Lanka to generate electricity from wind.
Adani and the Adani Group, in fact, tie up with Tanzania in a strategic partnership. In fact, Gautam Adani met President of Tanzania today and posted about this on the social media.
A conglomerate celebrated globally as a symbol of rapid expansion and prosperity.
Gautam Adani, an Indian businessman who made his fortune in shipping and coal production, has officially passed Jeff Bezos to become the world's second richest
person. The Adani
person.
Group has been truly astonishing. In little over a decade, you have become India's largest private sector power producer, port operator, airport operator, consumer gas business, and electric transmission company, apart from being the largest infrastructure developer and generator in
a conglomerate whose rapid expansion and prosperity has been allegedly shrouded in a complex web of deception and risk.
Tonight, NTV can reveal details of a contract the government agreed on with a company directly linked to the Indian conglomerate Adani Group to develop a 104.8 billion shilling technology system for the Social Health Authority (SHA). The local company, opaque Limited, is a subsidiary of an international company that is a subsidiary of another international company in which Adani has a stake.
From disputed land grabs to financial manipulation, from environmental destruction.
Australia has approved Adani Group's controversial Carmichael coal project despite steady resistance from environmental groups.
Absolute shocker. You can't address climate change by approving new coal mines. And this groundwater approval that was given by our state, Queensland Labor government today, flies in the face of all of the warnings of a good 7 top water experts that just told us in the last week that this is going to stuff up the groundwater system and possibly suck dry an ancient million-year-old spring system.
Questionable political ties.
This is as big as it gets for India. We're talking about the second richest man in the country and a man very close ties with the Modi government.
प्रधानमंत्री जी इजराइल जाते हैं और उसके एकदम बाद डिफेंस का रिश्ता है वो पूरा पूरा अदानी जी के हाथ में चला जाता है। ऑस्ट्रेलिया में प्रधानमंत्री जाते हैं, स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया $1 बिलियन लोन अदानी जी को ऑफर करता है। मोदी जी की पहली ट्रिप होती है बांग्लादेश में, वहां पे बांग्लादेश को इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बेचने का डिसीजन लिया जाता है। कुछ ही दिन बाद बांग्लादेश पावर डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड 25 साल का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट अदानी जी के साथ साइन करता है। श्रीलंका में श्रीलंका इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड के चेयरमैन कहते हैं, राजपक्सा जी ने कहा कि हिंदुस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री ने उनको कहा है कि ये विंड पावर का प्रोजेक्ट है, ये अदानी जी को देना है। पहले अदानी जी के हवाई जहाज में मोदी जी जाते थे, अब मोदी जी के हवाई जहाज में अदानी जी जाते हैं। पहले लोकल मामला था, फिर नेशनल मामला हो गया, उसके बाद इंटरनेशनल मामला हो गया। ये हिंदुस्तान की फॉरेन पॉलिसी नहीं है, ये अदानी जी की फॉरेन पॉलिसी है, उनके बिजनेसेस बनाने की फॉरेन पॉलिसी है।
The Adani Group stands at the heart of a modern-day corporate saga. A conglomerate accustomed to all sorts of adversity. This is the story of Gautam Adani and his empire, the Adani Group, a business conglomerate hailed by some as a symbol of India's global ambitions, yet denounced by others as a ruthless corporate machine. A machine powered not by innovation, but by influence, secrecy, and exploitation. June 24, 1962, in the modest city of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, a young Gujarati Jain couple welcomed their 7th child. Shantilal Adani, a humble textile merchant, and his wife Shantaben, known for her warmth and devotion to the family. They lived a quiet life. Like every other couple in a third world country, they were grateful but always on the edge, barely able to support their growing family on a modest income. Shantilal worked tirelessly day and night, while Shantaben kept their home a sanctuary in the midst of financial struggle. Their new son will soon be known by a name that will echo far beyond Gujarat, Adani. At 17, he enrolled in a commerce studies, hoping to carve out a stable future, but left after 2 years, unsatisfied with the classroom's limitations. Little did anyone know that his next steps will lay the foundation for a business empire that will reshape not only India, but stretch across continents. The child was
Gautam Adani,
and his empire, the Adani Group,
is on a shopping spree.
will grow to symbolize both breathtaking ambition and perhaps the most controversial rise in modern corporate history. But as we pull back the curtain, we ask, what lies beneath the shining towers of Adani Empire? And how did this boy from Gujarat go on to build a business that now divides opinion across the globe? We all love stories from rags to riches. It inspires us to realize the inevitability of success if we just grind ourselves into prosperity and utilize every opportunity in front of us to achieve our goals. At just 16 years of age, Adani moved to Mumbai to work as a diamond sorter for Mahendra Brothers. 3 years later, Adani was invited by his brother to manage his plastic business operations in Ahmedabad. Adani used this venture to propel himself into the global trading of PVC imports. In 1985, Adani started importing primary polymers for small-scale industries. After many years of hard work, Adani saw remarkable success and decided it was time to expand. 1988 marked the beginning of Adani's footprint in global trading and economic influence in India and across the world. It was at this time that Adani established Adani Exports, which traded in agricultural and power commodities. Adani Export is what is now known as Adani Enterprises, the holding company of the Adani Group. Indian economic market was lagging behind since the 1960s. Political influence from the communist Soviet Union made it impossible for India to cement itself as a significant player in global trade. Smaller efforts were being made, and by 1991, the Indian government faced default on its external debt. Something had to be done. Before any change was made, tragedy befell India. On a chilling night around 10 p.m., May 21st, 1991, Rajiv Gandhi, the youngest India's Prime Minister from 1984 to 1989, stopped at Sriperumbudur in Tamil Nadu to campaign for his re-election. He left the car and began walking towards the dais to deliver his campaign speech. Many well-wishers greeted him with pomp and glory, praising him with songs and dances, while others gifted him gallants. At exactly 10:10 p.m., a 22-year-old woman by the name Kalavaini, a member of the banned Sri Lanka Tamil separatist rebel organization Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam (LTTE), approached Rajiv Gandhi, but he was stopped. Unfortunately, Rajiv Gandhi ordered the police to allow all well-wishers with gallants to gift him. Kalavaini saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She approached and greeted Rajiv Gandhi as happy as a clown. She then bent down, touched her feet, and suddenly, Kalavaini detonated an RDX explosive-laden belt tucked below her dress. Rajiv Gandhi was no more. The assassination of Rajiv Gandhi sent shockwaves through India, igniting a chain of events that will radically reshape the nation's economic and political landscape, unleashing a tidal wave of reforms that fueled an explosive rise in emerging industries. These reforms allowed India to enjoy reduced import tariffs, liberalization of trade, increased foreign investment, and expansion of infrastructure and energy sectors to private players, reducing the state's monopoly over large-scale projects and utility. At the helm of these economic reforms, a business-savvy 29-year-old Gautam Adani positioned the Adani Group as a formidable player in trade, infrastructure, port development, logistics, and energy. Venturing into these sectors made the Adani Group one of the major economic players in India for decades. Power and wealth often come at a price. For Gautam Adani, that price included moments of sheer terror and near-death experiences, moments that will go on to define the man and his empire. On a calm evening, January 1st, 1998, Adani and his associate Shantilal Patel were at Kanavati Club in Ahmedabad. Kanavati Club has been a widely recognized, prestigious recreational and social organization in India since 1998. It attracts various business professionals, athletes, actors, and politicians for numerous gatherings and sometimes formal meetings. At around 7:30 p.m., Adani and Shantilal left the club, and shortly after they headed toward Muhammadpura Road, they were abruptly stopped by a scooter. A group of men in a van approached their car and kidnapped them. The kidnappers took them to a strange place and demanded a ransom of 1.5 to 2 million US dollars. The next day, Adani and Shantilal were released. But this is where things are a little bit unclear. This abduction is unclear whether it happened or not, since there is no footage or key witnesses to confirm these allegations. It's also unclear whether this ransom was paid, since no public record shows such a transaction. The kidnappers were alleged to be two former gangsters, Fazul Rahman and Bogelal Darji. These two were arrested shortly after the incident, and the case remained unsolved until 2018, when they were released due to insufficient evidence and key witnesses, since Adani and Shantilal did not appear for depositions despite multiple summons by the court. Also, Adani and Shantilal have never wanted to go public with this story. When Adani is asked about the 1998 kidnapping, all he says is that this was one of the 2 or 3 very unfortunate incidents that happened in his life. The news about this abduction sent shockwaves to Indian media and increased Adani's high-profile status in the country. Could this be the attention that he wanted? Why would he let go of such a harrowing experience? This was a grave matter. Was their absence to appear before the court a way to forgo accountability, especially given the severity of the crime? Being a high-profile case, could their absence from appearing before the court be a strategy to avoid prolonged media exposure and to maintain a focus on Adani's growing business empire? Could it be a way to minimize reputational risks or potential legal entanglements that could interfere with their business operations? Adani is a strange individual. Understanding his decisions and moves is quite a hassle. His complexity is also evident in the complex structure of the Adani Group. Despite all his fortune, media attention, and a massive media company, Adani has never been the kind of person who thirsted for media presence. Almost all his media interviews look like a perfectly orchestrated performance. His minimal, well-orchestrated media presence makes it very challenging to understand this decision if you are not within his circle. But the lingering question remains: why does someone with so much power and influence leave these pivotal events so ambiguously unanswered? November 26, 2008, the bustling streets of Mumbai were alive with energy. Unaware of the horror about to unfold, at the iconic Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, Adani sat for dinner with a business associate, savoring the comforts of luxury and the beautiful, delicious and spicy Indian cuisine. They were having a time of their life, oblivious to the storm that was gathering outside. At 9:20 p.m., the first shots rang out at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. This was one of a series of 12 coordinated shooting and bombing attacks in Mumbai, lasting 4 days. The grandeur of the hotel turned into a battlefield as gunmen stormed in, firing indiscriminately. As one of the analysts describes,
an attack was just short of war.
Adani, caught in the crossfire, had mere seconds to act. Adani rushed to hide in the hotel kitchen, but the gunfire drew closer. The kitchen was no longer a sanctuary. Driven by instinct and sheer desperation, he fled deeper into the hotel, finally locking himself in a cramped toilet. Adani describes that he was 15 feet away from death, recalling the intense fear and constant prayers for survival. For 11 harrowing hours, Adani remained hidden in the toilet. Every footstep outside, every muffled scream, every gunshot shattered the silence, bringing him face to face with his own mortality. Alone in the darkness, he prayed, his only shield against the terror that surrounded him. Fortunately, Adani and more than 50 other hostages were rescued at 8:45 a.m. the next day by India's National Security Guard. These harrowing experiences left unhealed scars on Adani, likely deepening his resolve to expand and secure his business interests. These experiences marked both personal and professional turning points, reinforcing Adani's resilience and drive in the face of adversity. The years that followed, the Adani Group, with its founder Adani, enjoyed massive success outside the global scrutinizing eyes. A phenomenal growth was seen with Adani was an explosion in personal wealth from 8.9 billion to a whopping 150 billion in just 3 years, becoming the second richest man just after Elon Musk in 2022. Beneath the glitters of wealth and prosperity of Adani rising to the upper echelons of life, allegedly lies a complex network of deception. A financial house of cards built on shaky foundations. In the early morning of January 24, 2023, Hindenburg Research, a US-based social company, published an extensive research document accusing the Adani Group of orchestrating one of the largest corporate frauds in history. The report revealed that the Adani Group was involved in a complex set of accounting fraud schemes and stock market manipulation for decades, which helped the Adani Group fuel an illusion of success in the stock market. Hindenburg Research alleged that the Adani Group formed a complex web of shell companies in tax-haven countries such as Mauritius, Cyprus, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, and the Caribbean, where they engaged in dubious accounting practices. The report alleges that the Adani Group was involved in numerous financial irregularities to inflate the valuations of the 7 key listed companies by over 85% to maintain the empire's rapid growth. These shell companies had suspicious characteristics such as lack of employees, no independent addresses or phone numbers, and websites created in a rush with basic efforts. Hindenburg alleges that these shell companies are used to obscure the true ownership of the Adani stock and to manipulate share prices. Also, Hindenburg Research accused Adani of fraudulently amassing over $100 billion in his net worth in just 3 years through stock price appreciation. The report details numerous complex and convoluted related party transactions between Adani Group companies and private entities controlled by Adani family members. These transactions, often lacking proper disclosure, allegedly serve to move money around the empire, boost reported earnings, and obscure the group's true financial position. For instance, the report cites instances where offshore entities with no obvious signs of operations lent significant sums to Adani-controlled entities, raising questions about the source and purpose of these funds. Furthering the illusion of success, the report highlights questionable accounting practices within the Adani Group. This includes high turnover in key financial positions such as the Chief Financial Officer role at Adani Enterprises, where 5 different individuals held the position in 8 years. Another mind-blowing revelation was the auditing of Adani Group of companies. Usually, a large company like the Adani Group should be audited by a large independent firm that is well recognized and established. However, in the case of Adani Group, an auditing firm known as Shah Dandaraya was their auditor. At the time of this report, Shah had no current website, and its historical archives showed that it had only 4 partners, 4 and 11 employees. Records show that it only paid roughly $435 per month in office rent. That was in 2021. That's equivalent to a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment in Rwaka. An auditing firm of that size would likely not have the needed resources to audit a billion-dollar conglomerate like the Adani Group. Shortly after this revelation, on May 2nd, 2023, Shah resigned as Adani Total Gas Limited auditors. The reason being professional preoccupation in other assignment. The Hindenburg Report questions the independence and capability of Adani Group's auditor Shah, given its small size and apparent lack of experience relative to the complexity of the Adani empire. A question that I would like to ask you is, why did Adani Group choose such a small company to be the auditor? Why did they not work with notable auditing firms like Deloitte, EY, Grant Thornton, KPMG, MSKA and Associates and PwC, which have scrutinized 2/3 of the 483 Nifty 50 companies in financial year 24, up from 61% in the financial year 23. Hindenburg alleges that these financial manipulation tactics, combined with Adani's close relationships with political and regulatory bodies, have allowed the group to operate with a lack of scrutiny, despite numerous past accusations of financial misconduct, including stock manipulation scams, tax evasions, and money laundering. The report raises concerns that this alleged financial house of cards could collapse, potentially devastating investors, institutions, and the economies reliant on the Adani Group. Key to this scheme is the alleged use of stock packing. Hindenburg claims that the Adani Group uses these offshore shell companies to hold large stakes in its listed companies, creating an artificial sense of demand and inflating share prices. For example, Hindenburg identified 5 funds managed by an entity called Monterosa Investment Holdings. These funds collectively own over $4.5 billion in shares of Adani companies. However, these funds share an address and suspiciously overlapping nominees, raising questions about their true independence. Hindenburg identified that the Adani Group has numerous stock-packing entities, all with similar characteristics, which are managing billions in assets, yet lacking basic information like employee details or websites. The stock-packing entities hold massive stakes in Adani Group companies but show little diversification, suggesting a motive to manipulate prices. A revelation by the Hindenburg that struck a chord is the deep involvement of the Adani Group in political and regulatory networks across countries, especially in India, which allowed it to bypass oversight and pursue aggressive expansion. This seems like a movie showing a complex financial house of cards network, a playbook that only a few individuals or companies have successfully exploited. To understand the deep involvement of Adani in India's politics, we have to go back in history. Adani's rise wasn't just about timing, it was about alignment. In 2001, Modi became the chief minister of Gujarat. During Modi's tenure, Adani's business empire saw massive growth due to Modi's emphasis on infrastructure and industrial growth in Gujarat. The Adani Group took advantage of this policy and rapidly expanded Adani Ports and SEZ Limited. In 2014, Modi ran for prime minister. During his campaigns, he frequently used Adani's private aircraft. This cemented the public perception of the close ties between Adani and Modi. Fortunately, Modi won the elections. And after 2014, Adani's business interests expanded at an unprecedented pace, both within India and globally. Adani enjoyed huge government contracts in energy, ports, airports, coal mining in India and other parts of the world, such as acquiring Abbot Point Port in Australia and the Carmichael mine in Queensland. Adani's close ties with Modi has been a very controversial issue in India.
Mr. Adani could not have generated this money. He's an infrastructure business. Where did this money come from? Whose money is it? That was the first question. Whose shell companies are there? These companies are working in the defense field. Why does nobody know whose money this is? There is a Chinese national involved in this.
There are numerous allegations that Adani received favorable treatment for securing government contracts and clearance. An example is the allocation of India's coal mines and ports without competitive bidding and regulatory changes that allegedly favored Adani's business interests. The Adani Group reportedly benefited from the land acquisitions and subsidies at rates significantly below market prices during Modi's government in Gujarat. Adani's rapid rise has fueled accusations of crony capitalism, where political connections allegedly enable preferential treatment, undermining fair competition. Also, projects like the Carmichael coal mine in Australia and port developments in India have faced backlash for environmental degradation and displacement of communities, raising concerns about how such projects were approved However, both Adani and Modi have consistently denied allegations of cronyism. Adani has attributed his business success to India's growth story and his entrepreneurial vision rather than political favoritism. This relationship remains a focal point of debate, with supporters highlighting Adani's contribution to infrastructure and job creation, while detractors seeing it as a symbol of unchecked corporate and political power. Back to the Hindenburg Research Report. From the reports, Adani was accused of manipulating regulatory bodies. Of concern here is SEBI. It is a regulatory body for securities and commodities markets in India, under the administrative domain of the Ministry of Finance within the government of India. A former trader whose identity was concealed by the Hindenburg Research accused SEBI officials of failing to adequately monitor the Adani Group's activities. The trader suggested that SEBI's oversight was lacking, particularly regarding Adani Group's use of offshore entities and complex financial structures which allegedly facilitated stock manipulation. This accusation raised concerns about SEBI's effectiveness in preventing potential fraud and maintaining market integrity. These opaque practices about market manipulation, violating SEBI's regulations requiring minimum public shareholding and transparency of ownership. Hindenburg also raises concerns about the risks Adani Group practices pose into India's financial system and any foreign entity that partners with Adani. This is because, as Hindenburg Research investigated, the financial structure that the Adani Group built, it appeared stable on the surface, but could be on the verge of collapse. And actually, after this report, it collapsed. Remember when you talked about the Hindenburg Research being a short seller company? Someone might argue, why should we trust whatever short seller company says? What is a short seller company in the first place? First of all, we have to understand what short selling is. Short selling is a risky financial strategy that allows investors to profit from a decline in stocks prices. It's essentially betting against a stock or a company. Generally, when you buy a stock, you expect the price to increase. And if the stock goes up, you make money. For instance, if you buy a stock of $100 and after a few years, the stock prices go to $289, you make a profit of $189. However, when you short a stock, you expect the stock price to go down. Shorting a stock is the inverse of buying a stock, often refers to as going long. A short seller company or a short seller trader is a trader in the stock market who speculates on a company's stock prices declining and profiting from this decline. Usually, this decline happens when the irregularities in the company's stocks have been revealed, sending shockwaves in the stock market and the company's stocks falling. A simple explanation of how short selling works is, let's say person A is a short seller. Person A will borrow shares of a company he or she thinks will drop in price from a brokerage firm. Person A will then sell the borrowed shares at the current market price, even though he or she doesn't own them. If the prices of the stocks drop, person A will buy back the shares at a lower price. Afterward, person A will give back the shares to the broker he or she borrowed them from, and he will keep the difference in the stock prices as profit. Someone might wonder, why does short selling look illegal? Why does it look like it's a sabotage to a company success? Can someone publish false information about the company and short sell it? Unfortunately, that's not the truth. Short selling is legal and they exploit the company's irregularities to promote liquidity, stabilize markets, and help investors and companies reduce risk on their portfolios. There are many short seller companies and their existence is crucial in ensuring the legitimacy of companies in the stock markets and protecting both buyers and sellers. Short selling is overseen by financial market regulators such as the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority in the United States, and SEBI, the one that we talked about previously in India. If a short selling company engages in fraudulent short selling practices, they will be sued and responsible parties will be jailed. Now, in the case of Hindenburg Research, knowing their reputation in the financial markets, they knew that they had concrete evidence and that releasing this evidence will wreck the entire financial structure of Adani Group. It was inevitable that the Adani Group's publicly traded company stocks would fall. This revelation was so devastating that the Adani Group lost over $104 billion in value. In just 10 days, Adani lost over $48 billion of his personal wealth, pushing him to the rank of the 16th richest man. As a result, Hindenburg Research made a profit of $4 million from short selling Adani stocks. Hindenburg has shorted other companies like Nikola Corporations, Clover Health, Econ Enterprises, and X, and has made massive profits from short selling. The rapidly falling stock prices of Adani Group's publicly traded companies made Adani scalp over $2 billion in share sale, which he later promised that Adani Enterprises will return to its investors. 1 month later, after the Hindenburg Report was released, Adani's group stocks rose to almost where it was before. He regained most of his wealth and re-entered the top 20 richest people on earth. And at the time of recording of this video, Adani was the second richest man in India and positioned at number 21 globally. How did this happen? How powerful is this guy and his company? Adani Group's market capitalization returned to over 200 billion after the Supreme Court directed SEBI to expedite its investigation. After the revelations by Hindenburg, the Adani Group came publicly and denied all the allegations. The Indian Supreme Court ordered SEBI to investigate the allegations and set up a 6-member expert panel led by the retired Supreme Court Judge A.M. Sapre to examine potential regulatory failures. The Supreme Court directed SEBI to expedite its investigations and complete pending probes within 3 months. However, SEBI sought extensions and the investigation faced scrutiny for its pace and transparency. The court declined to form a special investigating team or transfer the probe to another body, reaffirming SEBI's responsibility to lead the investigation. The Supreme Court noted that third-party reports like those from Hindenburg Research and OCCRP could not independently serve as evidence but might act as inputs for regulatory scrutiny. It emphasized SEBI's role as the appropriate authority to investigate the allegations. Additionally, the court advised SEBI and the government to consider the recommendations of an expert panel to strengthen investor protections. The decision brought relief to the Adani Group as the court found no grounds to question SEBI's investigation process. The case was seen as a test of India's regulatory framework for addressing allegations against high-profile corporations. Despite these efforts, critics still argue that the process lacks urgency and it is influenced by the close ties between Adani Group and key political figures like Modi, the Prime Minister of India. The controversy remains a focal point of public and investor interest in India's regulatory and judicial frameworks. From this incident alone, I think we all have a rough picture of how powerful Adani and his company might be. In the heart of Queensland, Australia, lies a coal mine so vast it has become a symbol of contention. The Carmichael coal mine, owned by Adani subsidiary, Bravos Mining and Resources, is not just a site of extraction. It is a battleground of ethics, environmental justice, and corporate overreach. For years, the mine has been subject to widespread opposition, from indigenous groups fighting to protect sacred wetlands to environmental activists warning of its catastrophic impact on the Great Barrier Reef. Yet, despite the uproar, Adani's ambitions dig deeper. A few years ago, journalists attempted to report on the Carmichael site. The Bravos Mining threatened them with legal action. These threats demanded prior written consent for publishing any findings, a chilling reminder of the risks of those uncovering the truth about the Adani Group. Why such secrecy? What is Bravos trying to hide in these vast coal fields? The answers could shake the foundation of public trust of this company. In Zambia, the Kafue River was a lifeline. Its waters now reach the community and ecosystems around Kafue. The Kafue River Basin is the lifeline of about 40% of all Zambia's economic activities. Under the leadership of Jaya Kumar, a life-threatening tragedy unfolded. As the director of operations of Concola Copper Mines, Janakaraj saw KCM's overall operations when a pollution disaster poisoned the Kafue River and Mushima streams. Heavy metal poisoning from Concola Copper Mines ravaged the surrounding region, including farmlands and the Kafue River. Toxic effluents such as lead and copper from this mine left villagers and children in Kafue with horrible health issues, their life marred by suffering. A BBC journalist once visited the region and said that he could smell and even taste the pollution, with villagers complaining that Kafue River and Mushishima Spring have turned into rivers of acid, and their once fertile lands produce virtually nothing. The Kafue River Basin region is currently one of the most polluted places on earth. The legal case of this pollution was resolved through the settlement in January 2021. KCM and Vedanta Resources, which owns 80% of KCM, they denied liability but reached an agreement with claimants around 2,577 farmers. Janakaraj moved on, but the scars he left behind remained indelible. You might be wondering if Adani Group was involved in this incident. The answer is a simple no. Unfortunately, a few years after this incident, Janakaraj was appointed as Adani's Australian operations CEO at the Carmichael site. When Adani Group expanded its operations in Australia, the appointment of Jayakumar raised eyebrows. Why would a controversial company appoint another individual with another controversy that cost the lives of young children in Africa? Oh, Adani Group thought, right, this is the best candidate. Adani failed to disclose Janakaraj's role in Zambia's disaster to Australian authorities. Why did they not reveal this? This is such a significant issue, especially when people's lives and country's key resources are on the line. This case was heard in the Australian Parliament, and the most shocking judgment was found. The Adani Group made a mistake. That's what the Parliament found. A mistake. A mistake for not revealing this crucial information. Under Australia's Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act, providing misleading information during a permit application is an offense. But even when this omission was exposed, the federal government chose not to act. Why was this overlooked? How could a company tied to environmental tragedy and opaque dealings escape accountability once again? The silence is deafening and the implications profound. Adani's footprints are in every sector of the global economy. In 2018, Adani Defense and Aerospace entered a controversial partnership with Israel's Elbit system to manufacture Hermes 900 military drones in India. By February 2024, these drones were delivered to the Israeli Defense Forces, making a turning point in India's role in global military conflicts. Human rights groups condemned the move, accusing India and Adani of complicity in Israel's military campaigns against Palestinians. These drones are used for surveillance purposes and bombardment, aiding Israelis to carry out operations against Hamas targets in Gaza. India and Adani had not publicly acknowledged the transfer of Indian-made drones to Israel. A source at Adani confirmed to The Wire that the drones were in fact exported to Israel. Hermes 900 drones are usually made in Israel. For the first time, Elbit Advanced System gave this contract to a company outside Israel to manufacture Hermes 900 drones. This deal wasn't just about business, it signified a geopolitical alliance. And how did Adani and Defense Aerospace obtain this deal? It's alleged that Prime Minister Modi had an influence on this deal, allowing Adani Defense and Aerospace to have a joint venture with Elbit Systems. For years, Bangladesh enjoyed some of the lowest electricity costs in South Asia, with power sourced from domestic and other international providers such as India. Outsourcing power from India was cheaper than domestic production. But that changed in 2017 when Adani Power Limited subsidiary power company, APJL, struck a secretive deal with the Bangladeshi government. The result? Skyrocketing prices and a nation held hostage by debt. The terms of this deal were so bad for local Bangladeshis, locking Bangladesh into paying 27% higher than comparable rates from other Indian private producers and as much as 63% higher than India's state-owned plants. This steep increase in costs added financial strain to Bangladesh's power sector. On November 8, 2024, APJL held the entire country hostage by cutting the electricity supply to Bangladesh by over 60% due to an arrears of over $800 million that was supposed to be cleared by November 7, 2024 for 3 harrowing days. Fortunately for Bangladeshis, the Bangladesh government decided to ramp up these payments. But how did Bangladesh sign such an expensive deal with the Adani Group that they knew it would be very costly for the country? And how did Adani and his company earn such a lucrative deal? Again, one name appears: Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi has been accused of being a key player in the outburst of Adani and his company's wealth. The Adani Power Limited deal with Bangladesh was signed when Prime Minister Modi visited Bangladesh in the first week of June 2015. It might be safe to assume that Prime Minister Modi influenced Adani and his company to win the deal between his company and Bangladesh. The opaqueness and lack of transparency of the deal have led to increased calls for the deal to be reviewed or renegotiated due to its financial burden on Bangladesh Power Development Board and consumers. The opaqueness in this energy deal between Bangladesh and Adani wasn't just any kind of opaqueness. There was no public disclosure when this deal was made. The deal wasn't a coincidence. The high electricity costs in Bangladesh aren't just a mere coincidence. It's alleged that this is a perfectly orchestrated scheme, according to May 2024 report investigation by OCCRP and Financial Stamps, which revealed that the Adani Group fraudulently inflated the price of coal that is supplied to domestic utility companies by falsifying low-grade coal as high-grade. The Adani Group imported coal worth $5 billion at more than double the market prices through offshore intermediaries in Singapore, Taiwan, and Dubai. A notice by the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence also accused 5 Adani Group companies of artificially inflating the value of imported coal from Indonesia by 50% to 100% to overcharge the power companies. Adani Group has also managed to block the release of documents to Indian government agencies for investigation in Singapore. Adani's tactics weren't just isolated in Bangladesh. Across India and beyond, the same pattern emerges: opaque contracts, inflated prices, and a system rigged to benefit the powerful at the expense of the ordinary people. Adani is one of the energy distribution companies in India. India still suffers high electricity prices, despite India being the country with the cheapest cost of electricity production in Asia-Pacific region. But they pay 3 times to 4 times the cost of generating this electricity. To Kenyans watching this, do all these allegations ring a bell? The lack of transparency seen with Bangladesh deal with Adani Power is the same as Kenya was experiencing with the Adani Group on the deals with airports, ports, and energy. It's quite clear that the Adani Group is no stranger to such dealings. What's even more mind-boggling is that Bangladesh now has excess energy capacity. It's reported that power plants in Bangladesh have as much as 10,000 megawatts capacity and are just sitting idle due to lack of primary fuel. Unlike Bangladesh, Kenya does not have such a generation capacity. However, the lack of transparency in the trade deals with Adani raises concerns. In Kenya, there was no competitive bidding for processes such as strategic national assets, which is required by the Kenyan Constitution under the Public Procurement and Asset Disposable Act of 2015. Aside from that, the terms were extremely unfair for this country. The proposed agreement will grant Adani a 30-year lease to operate JKIA in exchange for an investment of $1.85 billion. At the end of the lease period, Adani will retain 18% equity stake in the airport, and the Kenyan government will be required to pay a concession fee starting at $40 million, increasing by 10% every 5 years. Kenyans protested against this deal. However, Adani argues that their investment and expertise will transform JKIA into a world-class airport, benefiting the Kenyan economy and creating employment opportunities. Adani has also stated that the project is still in due diligence and that no final agreement has been reached. They contend that the claims of a 30-year lease are premature and misrepresent the facts. The energy deal with Adani is also a major issue. A 30-year deal of high electricity charges. The current electricity charges are so outrageous. Now you want to tell me that we risk paying more electricity charges if this deal was to go through? No, that's not what we signed for. Is the deal a way to extort the public and enrich the corporate elites of Kenya and Adani and his companies? With a Kenyan government that cannot be trusted, with financial advisors to the government revealing the devastating state of corruption in Kenya, how can a company accused of perfecting the art of financial deception be trusted with the country's key resources? Investigating the Adani Group is an extremely risky endeavor. Remember when we talked about the Adani Group mining in Australia? 2 journalists paid a visit to the Carmichael site mining in Australia, where the Adani Group has been mining for quite some time. The Adani Group owns this site through their subsidiary firm, Bravos Mining and Resources. They signed a deal with the Australian government to mine this site for 60 years. These journalists have received legal threats from the Bravos Mining and Resources. Therefore, whatever I'm doing right now is significantly risky, and I have to present factual information and make some of the allegations clear. When you hear me using the word allegedly, I just don't want to be in a legal battle with a billion-dollar company with massive geopolitical influence. However, one lingering question remains. Why would Bravos Mining threaten journalists with legal action for publishing any findings from Carmichael's site without their prior written consent? For years, the allegations of fraud, manipulation, and exploitation have shadowed the rise of Adani and his company. At the time of recording this video, a US court issued an arrest warrant for Adani and his associates, which include his nephew Sagar Adani and 6 other associates involved in a bribe of over $250 million to Indian government officials, according to FBI investigations. The bribe was for Adani Green Energy to gain lucrative solar energy supply contracts that will enable them to raise billions of dollars from US investors and banks, obstruct justice, and generate profits of about $2 billion in 20 years. Another accusation, according to FBI Assistant Director James Dehaney, is that Adani and other defendants also defrauded investors by raising capital on the basis of false statements about bribery and corruption, while other defendants allegedly attempted to conceal the bribery conspiracy by obstructing government's investigations. Adani Group said in a statement that the allegations made by the US Department of Justice and by the US Securities Exchange Commission in a parallel civil case were baseless, and they denied it, adding that it will seek all possible legal recourse.
I now direct, in furtherance of the principles enshrined in Article 10 of the Constitution on transparency and accountability, and based on new information provided by investigative agencies and partner nations, that the procuring agencies within the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum immediately cancel the ongoing procurement process for the JKIA expansion public-private partnership transaction.
The cancellation of the Adani deals with Kenya is a reprieve for Kenyans, but still, Kenyans are not happy. Kenyans are saying that they told the president, but he refused to listen. What's even more unfortunate is that Kenyans don't trust their president. The question then arises, should countries entrust their vital resources to a company under such scrutiny? As the Adani Group continues to expand its reach to international markets, from Australia's controversial Carmichael coal project to Southeast Asian infrastructure, the ethical and financial implications become global concerns. For nations considering Adani as a partner, the stakes are high. When a company's financial structure is accused of being a house of cards, how much trust should be placed in it? How confident can any country be that its own resources, lands, and people won't be drawn into this labyrinth of financial and regulatory risk? The Adani Group's ambitions is boundless, reaching far beyond India's borders. But as the empire stretches, it carries with it an unresolved question. Will Adani's indictment stall his ambitions to take over the corporate world, given Adani's influence on India's economic growth and policies? Will the Indian government comply with the US government to extradite Adani if they have been ordered to, and his accused associates to the US to appear before the court? Will they willingly appear before the US court, knowing the repercussions it might have on the future of their empire? Only time will tell.